What any religious tradition ascribes as God's will is no concern of this Congress.
The suppression of the objective truth of God leads to a subjective nightmare, my friends. And our culture is going through it right now.
Senator, I'm a Christian.
I understand you are a Christian.
As a Christian, I believe that speaks clearly with regard to the centrality of Jesus Christ in salvation.
Do not think that I have come to bring peace on the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the King of the Cosmos. My name is Nathan Razor, your friendly neighborhood Bible guy. It's been about 2 weeks since we've done one of these, and that's because last week, well, we had a funeral going on. We, here at the Otisville congregation, we had a day of celebration as we celebrated the life and the legacy of a dear brother of all of us here, Wallace Ray. Wally was one of the guys who helped him and his wife to start the Otisville congregation, and he passed away, and he went on to his eternal reward to be with his Lord. And it was a day of celebration and a day of remembering the impact that he had on so many lives. And because of that, it took place on a Wednesday. We didn't have Bible study that week, and I was just caught up with everything else. I couldn't get an episode out there for you, but we're back with the program today, and as you can see, once again, I am at home. I am at home, and I am not at the desk. Well, once again, that wonderful thing called life, and you just gotta kind of make it work. So we are going back into the book of Matthew, okay? And we're back in the book of Matthew, and because it's been 2 weeks, I'll give you a little bit of a recap. We are in Matthew chapter 10. And in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus is still sending out the apostles, okay? This is what is known as the limited or lesser commission in comparison to the Great Commission that all disciples of Christ are told to partake in. This one is specifically for the apostles. Now, when we are reading through this text, as Jesus is giving them commands, giving them instructions, we have to know that not all the time it's talking about something that we directly pull from it. There may be principles there that we can pull from, as we're going to learn today, but these words are spoken directly to the apostles, and we just want to keep that in mind. So, more background knowledge. Jesus is sending them out to go and preach the gospel of the kingdom. Now, remember, Jesus has not died and resurrected yet. The whole crucifixion thing has not happened yet. Isaiah 53 being fulfilled. None of that's happened. They don't know all of that. All they know is this thing called the gospel of the kingdom. That's what they're told to go out and proclaim. The good news of the kingdom. And that is that the kingdom is at hand. God is re-inheriting all the nations. God only at Babel, according to Deuteronomy 32, he disinherited all the nations, and he just had the one inheritance, the nation of Israel. But he is now re-inheriting all the nations through the kingdom of God. And this has been alluded to in many passages in the Old Testament. One where, like in Habakkuk 2:14, the knowledge of the glory of the Lord is going to cover the earth as much as the waters cover the sea. Is that going to happen or not? It's going to happen, and it's going to happen through the proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom. There are passages like Isaiah 9, okay? And in Isaiah 9, Jesus is called the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. And it says right at the end of that slew of names, of the increase of his government, this Messiah, this one who's going to come, who's going to have all these titles, Emmanuel, of the increase of his government, there shall be no end. So the authority of God is going to go into all the world. Jesus has all that authority, and he is the king over all kings, Lord of all lords, and his power, his authority, his government over the world is going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow until we get to the point in like 1 Corinthians 15 when it says what? Jesus must reign until what? He puts all enemies under his feet. All of them. Not some of them, not little bits here and there, but it's going to happen, all of it, okay? It's not going to be like everything's going to be totally against Jesus at the end of time. No, everything's going to be under the authority of Jesus. And then he's going to come back and destroy the last enemy, which is death. That's exactly what the verse says. But in order for us to get there, what has to happen? The gospel of the kingdom has to go out there. And so the initiators of this are the apostles. They're going out into the towns in Israel, and they're going to be preaching this gospel of the kingdom. Hey, the Messiah is here. The promised kingdom of God is here. That way in which God will re-inherit all the nations and be sovereign over it all. Yeah, it's here. Repent and believe the gospel and come follow the Messiah and everything like that. Now, a lot of people don't like that, okay? Because remember, this stuff with Jesus didn't happen in the corner of a world, where nobody saw it. This is all front page news, so to speak, okay? So when the apostles are going out proclaiming the Lordship of Christ, and they're proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, they know exactly who Jesus is. And he's not the Messiah that they were expecting. He's not the Messiah that they were even wanting, because he was going against the religious norms of the day. He was going against the religious expectations. He was going against the religious elite, the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Who could go against those righteous guys? Well, he is. And on top of all that, he's not coming in to kick out the Romans, so to speak. He's not coming in to become a king in the way that we think and go out and conquer the world with the sword. The way that God conquers the world is through changing hearts and minds, okay? Which is totally contrary to what the Jewish people expected. And because of this, they weren't too keen on following him. They weren't too keen on listening to him, and people would reject him. They would reject him and thereby reject all the people that sent him, okay, or that were sent by him, his envoys, his ambassadors, the apostles. And Jesus gave them a warning. Because your message of the gospel of the kingdom is going to go into all realms of society. We remember talking about that it's going to go into the public square, the courts. They're going to deliver you over to the courts. It's going to go into the religious square. They're going to flog you in their synagogues, he warned. It's going to go into the political square, the governing square. Remember, you're going to be delivered over to governors and kings for my sake, he said just a few verses ago. This is going to happen because the gospel goes everywhere. There's not a place where it does not go. All realms of human society are to be put under the authority of the law of God. That's the way it is. And because people don't like that, naturally we fear. We fear of giving the gospel because we fear that, well, they're going to hate me, and for the apostles' sake, they're going to make fools of us, and they're going to persecute us, and they might even try to kill us and everything like that. And Jesus said, "Don't fear that. Don't fear that. Don't fear man. Fear God." Okay, who's the sovereign one here? God is. Okay, and all that is just one big giant lesson in just trust me. Just trust me that I know what I'm doing, that I'm God, and nothing's going to slip past my radar. I'm sovereign in all of this. And we get to the point where he gets to verse 34, okay, in our text. And he says, look, guys, okay, you think this is going to be a walk in the park. It's not. Verse 34, do not think that I have come to bring peace on the earth. I've not come to bring peace. I've come to bring a sword. Now, that's far removed from the cultural, secular understandings of who Jesus was. Well, Jesus was he was a good guy, and he was a nice teacher, and he told us to love everybody, their definition of love, not God's definition of love. And that kind of squishy understanding, gummy bear Jesus, that kind of gummy bear version of Jesus is not what we read here in texts like this in verse 34, where Jesus says, I've not come to bring peace on the earth. I've come to bring a sword. Now, how exactly does he mean that? Because in a way, In the most important way, Jesus has come to bring peace. He's come to bring peace between us and God, right? Romans 5:1. Therefore, having been justified, declared righteous by faith, not works, we have peace with God. He certainly has come to bring peace between us and God. But he's saying, do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. The contentions are going to rely, or not going to rely, but they're going to happen between you and man, you and your neighbor. It's not going to be the best kind of thing. It's not going to be a walk in the park again. I haven't come to bring peace. I have come to bring a sword. And then he explains further what he means in verse 35. I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Now, okay, I'm reading from the ESV, and it says, I've come to set a man. The word there for set is not what we think it is. It's dikazo, okay? And dikazo means to divide or to separate. So set is really not the best translation of that word. He leaves off verse 34 talking about a sword, and then he's illustrating that by saying, I've come to divide, to cut in half, to separate a man from his father, a daughter from his mother, and a daughter-in-law from her mother-in-law. Why? Why would there be this separation? Because there are those who in their sinful rebellion against God don't want to accept Jesus, and there are those who do accept Jesus, who do believe. And that dividing line is Jesus, okay? And this causes great contentions even into the most precious areas of our life, like families, okay? You can have members of a family who they trust in Jesus and they follow his commands and they love him, and the other members are like, you're crazy, and why would you do this? Why would you, destroy our family like this? Because depending on what religious affiliation you're from, and atheism is a religion, by the way, it could get really, really dangerous. There are some atheist families that is their thing. They will teach their children to not be theistic, to not be Christians, to not have any religious affiliations, to the point of anger, to the point of disowning if you do that. And there are certainly news stories that you can look up where that kind of thing has happened. But, more common to hear about in our day and time is what? Well, you hear of Islamic families where there's a member of a family in Islam, and one of them decides to go ahead and convert to Christianity. And the hatred that happens, that gets turned towards that family member because of that, is really scary to ponder. And it's exactly what Jesus is talking about here. There was a lady who lived in Ohio, 2008, I believe. She lived with her family. She was like 14 years old, Muslim background, Muslim family. And one day the girl, 14, decided she needs to follow Jesus. She trusts in Jesus. She believes that he's the Messiah. And her family expressed that they wanted to kill her and everything like this. And a whole court case happened. She wrote a book about it. And it just gets dangerous. I looked at this article on A&M, and this is what the article says about people in Muslim families over in the Middle East who you have people who turn to Jesus. This is what happens. In the most radical Muslim families, a convert is locked in a room and given 3 days to return to Islam. If they refuse, they are slaughtered. If they escape, they will be hunted by the family for years. If children are involved when a husband comes to Jesus, they are considered bastards because they no longer have a Muslim father. They are either given to another family member or killed. In a less religious family, the convert may be taken to the imam, who may lead the family into beating the believer. If the convert is a woman, her family may force her to marry a Muslim cousin to avoid shame and scandal. Many have been restrained with ropes, burned with acid or hot oil, and subjected to electrical shocks. Sometimes families commit converts to mental institutions, thinking that leaving Islam is a sign of insanity. Others are forced to leave home, family, and the community that they know. It's like this with Islam, but they're not the only ones. Make no mistake. It's anyone who has hostility towards Jesus. And this going back even in the first century and even in some Jewish families today. Certainly back then, if you were to accept Jesus as the Messiah, that is like, how could you do that? How could you do that? You'd be flogged in the synagogue, as Jesus warns. It's not a very good thing to be doing that. And so he's giving them the warning that this is the purpose, and this is what is going to happen. And us too, even today. Look, I say this all the time. We live in the comfort of America. We're very comfortable here. We don't have persecution like our other brothers and sisters all around the world do. We just don't. So when we talk about the whole counting the cost of discipleship, it doesn't really hit home for us as much as it does our other brothers and sisters who actually they are counting the cost because they know it could cost them their life. It's going to cost them relationships. It's going to cost them a bunch. There is a cost to following Jesus. It's not a passive walk in the park kind of thing. To have faith, to have true reliance upon, true trust in Jesus for salvation. That is a real thing that affects the people around you, because you change. You completely change. You stop doing the things that you used to do. You stop going out and getting drunk at parties, and you stop having orgies, and you stop doing all the things that the world used to do. And as soon as you do that, all the friends that you used to do that with, are all of a sudden angry at you. They're angry at you because you've decided to change your life around, and you changing your life around has now pricked their conscience to like, oh, wait, why would he just do this unless there's something to it? Oh, no, got to suppress that. I'm angry at you now. That's what happens. It happens all the time. So, big cost for following Jesus. Verse 36. Hold on. Sip of coffee. By the way, you see that? Yep. Courtesy of my mother. King of the Cosmos cup. No, I'm not selling them. Anyways, so verse 36, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. I should have included that with the other verse, but that's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Verse 37, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Okay, now pause right there, okay? Just little discussion really quick, okay? It's statements like these that Jesus makes that really just scream of his deity, because this shows he's not just another prophet of God, as some would claim, okay? You can't find anywhere in the Old Testament where there would be a prophet of Yahweh, a prophet of God, that would ever dare to suggest, to say something like, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. What? Yeah, that's because he's not just a normal prophet, okay? And the disciples, they're slowly learning this more and more and more and more. He's Yahweh in human flesh. There's a whole reason why only he can make claims like this with any sort of weight to them. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Now, okay, if you have kids, how hard is that, guys? Girls? How hard is it to love Jesus more than you love your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your kids? Okay, look, I would be lying to you if I said that it was not a challenge internally to love Jesus more than I love my daughter. I love my daughter. I love her. She's a bundle of energy. She brings so much joy and so much light to my life. She is a blessing, okay? She really is a blessing from God. But what I have to constantly remind myself is that the blessing from God is not God. The blessing comes from God. Okay? You can, even in, today's day and time, you can tell when parents worship their children as idols, okay? Or worship their spouse as idols. And they'll never just come out and say, I'm worshiping them. No, it comes down to service and attitude. How much attention, how much love, how much affection are you giving to one and not the other? There are parents who worship their children because they serve them a lot more, and they're more concerned about, and they love their children more than Jesus. That's a challenge, okay? Jesus wouldn't have said that if he didn't know it wasn't going to be a challenge for us, because it is. We have to remember, like I was talking with my mother recently, and my mother said the best thing, that as much as I love you boys, I have to understand that you're not mine. Like, you're God's. God let me have you for a certain amount of years. Sure, I birthed you and I took care of you, but you're God's, you're not mine, and I have to give you back. And I'm like, that's just so true and so profound and everything like that. It was just so good. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, and it's a daily challenge, okay? Because here's the pendulum swing that we are trying to avoid. Just because we love Jesus more than our spouse, more than our children, okay, does not mean that you then hate them, okay? That's the other side. That's the pendulum swing. What we need to do is balance stuff out, okay? We need to love Jesus more, but we need to love our children and our spouses in the appropriate biblical way. So there's that to consider. Verse 38. And whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Okay, we have to remember that the cross had a whole cultural background at this point. They knew exactly what he was saying. Now, is he foreshadowing his death on the cross? Of course, he is. The disciples don't know that. They just know what he is saying. What he's saying is join the death march, okay? Because the cross had a whole cultural background of pain and humiliation, the worst possible way to go out. And Jesus is saying, I'm picking up my cross, you follow me. You pick up your cross as well, and you follow me, okay? Whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me, okay? The cross is ingrained in the Jewish mind at this time. This is something that the Romans would use on the Jewish people all the time. There was a man named Judas the Zealot, okay? And if you remember a few classes ago, we were talking about the Zealots and how they were the religious extremists of the day, okay? And Judas the Zealot existed, he lived a few years actually before Jesus spoke these words. And he claimed to be the Messiah as well. And he led a whole bunch of Jewish men, Jewish zealots, out into the desert to fight the Roman forces. And the Roman Emperor Varus, he slaughtered them all. He destroyed them. Clearly, he wasn't the Messiah. Judas wasn't the Messiah. And then, as a consequence of that, as like a learning lesson to the Jewish people, not to try this stuff again, he lined up 2,000 Jewish men and crucified them in a line. I can't remember exactly how long the line was. It was written down somewhere as I was reading about that historical event. But it had to be long. They crucified in a straight line 2,000 Jewish people. Okay? The cross was ingrained into their minds in the culture. And it was something to be feared. And it was something to be disgusted by. And then here's Jesus saying, if you're not even willing to take up your cross and follow me, you're not worthy of me. So it's not just give up the very things that are dear to you. It's not just give those things or have a lesser preference of those things in comparison to me. Deny those things It's also deny yourself. It's also be willing to give up your own life for me. And not just give it up, easy death. Be willing to undergo the most painful and excruciating death that you can go through, the cross. Because if you don't, you're not worthy of me. This is pretty serious words, isn't it? Verse 39. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, this is one of those paradoxes in Christianity. There are a few paradoxes in Christianity. If you were at Otisville on Sunday, we talked about one of them. And, one of them, Paul had the thorn in his side, and, he prayed to the Lord, please remove the thorn from me. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is proved in weakness. And then Paul says, okay, I will. I'll glory in my weakness, because when I am weak, then I am strong. There's a paradox right there. And here's another one, okay? Like later on in the epistles, count it all joy when you suffer. to the worldly mind, that's like, what? Say that again? Here's another one. Whoever finds his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake is going to find it. Now, what does that mean? Okay, he just got done. You need to deny yourself, deny your love for your family, to the extent that you love me more than you love them. Not that you don't love them, you love them, but you love me more than them. You love me more than your own life. Okay. So he says, whoever finds his life will lose it. If you're not going to do that stuff, if you're going to cherish all the stuff that you have here in life right now, and not me, you're going to lose your life. Okay, eternally so. You're gonna live for yourself, and maybe even live for those around you, and live to accumulate, and live for wealth and everything like that. Whoever finds their life, going to lose it eternally. But then the paradox is, whoever will lose their life, the other end of that, whoever will lose their life, deny yourself here, will find it eternally so. Okay? And I gave the illustration last night during Wednesday night Bible class about, I can't remember where it was. It was a sermon that I was watching one time, and this guy had like a rope, and it was 100 foot long. And on the edge of the rope, he had just a little section of green electrical tape around the end of the rope, okay? And he said, this little green area represents 70-80% of our life, or 70 to 90 years of our life, okay? That's our life here on earth. And the rest of that rope is all eternity. Now, of course, we would know that the rope goes on forever because it's eternal. But it really, in order to visualize just a piece of what that is, really puts things in perspective. Look, here's a real thing to consider, okay? Because you're going to exist. We don't know how time works in the new heavens and the new earth. Probably it works the same way in the new heavens and the new earth. But you're going to exist for 1,000,000 years and more. When you hit your 1,000,000th year of existence, where do you want to be? At what point do you want to be at in your 1,000,000th year of existence? Do you want to be enjoying the bliss of the new heavens, new earth with God? Or do you want to spend it eternally separated from him, separated from the joy of his presence? That's what we have to put into perspective. So when we look at that, denying ourselves for 70, 80, 90, 100 years, 70, 80, 90, 100 years of suffering, of denying yourself, of persecution, whatever it is, really doesn't look that bad in comparison to your 1,000,000th year of existence. Something to consider, I think. I think it's something to consider. I consider it because that is an inevitable reality. You will meet your 1,000,000th year of existence. There's no way to get around it. You will meet that time. Where do you want to be? Good question. So, Wrapping it up here in verses 40 through 42, okay? Whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. Now, what did that mean to them, okay? Well, if they're going to receive the apostles into their house when they're out preaching the gospel, then they receive the message of God, then they've received Jesus. It's the same thing. You receive their ambassador, you receive the envoy of the king, you receive the king in spirit. And then you also receive the one who sent him, okay? Who sent Jesus? Jesus is the Son, the eternal Son. Who sent Jesus? The Father did, okay? The Father sent Jesus. So, verse 41, the one who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And the one who receives a righteous person because he is a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And whoever gives one of these little ones, and contextually here, little ones means disciples, even a cup of cold water because he is my disciple, truly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. Now, what is that section talking about? Okay. What does it mean to receive a prophet or a righteous person and you get the reward for receiving that prophet? Literally taking them in or taking care of them in some way, okay? Well, in order to understand that, I think we got to go back to the Old Testament. In 1 Kings 17, you have Elijah and the widow's son, where you have this widow and she has her son, and they only have I think it was only a little bit of flour or oil left, okay? And they were going to make some stuff with that, and then they were going to die. They were going to starve to death because that was the last meal. That's the only bit of resources that they had left. And Elijah, the prophet from God, said, why don't you go ahead and feed me? Why don't you go ahead and feed me and take care of me, okay? And she's like, okay, I'll do it. Long story short. And what happened? The jar never went out after that. God provided for them. He gave them the reward. The oil never ran out. The flour never ran out. That was their reward for receiving the prophet. They got the prophet's reward. Okay, receiving the righteous person, they got the righteous person's reward. Another good example, 2 Kings chapter 7, chapter 4, with Elisha. Not Elijah, but Elisha. And Elisha with the Shunammite woman, she was talking to her husband and was talking about Elisha and saying, hey, you know that Elisha guy that every once in a while we listen to, and he passes by our house all the time. He visits us and stuff. Why don't we just go ahead and make a room for the guy? Why don't we make him his own room and put a bed in it and a lamp and whatever for him, so that whenever he's passing by, at least he has a place to stay. He has a roof over his head. He has a place to be taken care of. And it was because he did that, because Elisha was there in the house, their son died, and he brought him back to life. You receive the prophet, you receive the reward of receiving the prophet. Okay? And Jesus said that is even comparable to receiving one of the disciples, receiving one of the apostles contextually, but also you, disciple of Jesus, okay? When the world decides to go ahead and treat you right, it's a very good possibility God's going to bless them. Not for no reason, because number one, they did good to you, and number two, he may be using that goodness to bring them closer to him. So, anyways, okay, there's the end of that study, and I hope that it's blessed you in some way. If you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and send them to put it in the comment section, or send it directly to the church or to me personally, and I would love to be able to go ahead and take care of those things. But anyways, thank you so much for logging on today and listening to me babble as always. I'm always a talker, and I hope that you've been blessed by the lesson, and we will see you all next time. Take care. God bless.